So in this video, we're going to be looking at the first step, which is determining the rhythm and the rate. First of all, we're saying whether the rhythm is regular or irregular. Looking at this ECG, we can look at the R to R interval, or the distances between the QRS complexes. If the distance is constant, then we have a regular rhythm. If it varies, we have an irregular rhythm. Now what we're going to do is work out the rate. The way we calculate the rate is we count the number of squares. If you look, there are small squares and there are big squares. The small squares are 40 milliseconds and the big squares are 200 milliseconds. Now, if the R to R interval, or the distance between QRS complexes, is 5 big squares, then we can say that there's a QRS every second. If we do the maths, 5 times 200 milliseconds is 1 second. So that would be 1 every second, and therefore a rate of 60 beats per minute. Ultimately, the calculation of the rate is going to be 300 over the number of big squares. Now, going back to the big squares, if we had a QRS every 4 big squares, the rate would be 75. 300 divided by 4. 3 big squares, that would be 100. 2 big squares, 150. And finally, 1 big square, that would be a rate of 300 beats per minute. Now, looking at an irregular rhythm, it's slightly different in calculating the rate, because by definition, an irregular rhythm is where the rate changes from beat to beat. The way in which we calculate the rate, for this case, would be we look at the rhythm strip, and on the bottom, and we will usually have a 10-second run. Now, in a minute, there are 6 times 10 seconds. And so if we know how many QRSs are in 10 seconds, we can times it by 6 and we get the rate. So in this case, we count and we have 16 QRS complexes. 16 times 6 is 96, so 96 beats per minute. So we have our rate.